I realised that if I took the bands out and just got them absolutely off the fucking nut, on ecstasy, coke, booze, blah, 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 they're probably going to silence me eventually. Do you know what I mean? On a good day, you could think I might have become a taxi driver. And on a bad day, the likelihood I was just going to become a labourer.
The sinking sand of despair, the smell of dread in the air. I'm head to toe in my own fear. I'm going to die, no need to cry.
Episode 90 of the Michael Anthony Show. Alan McGee, how are you, buddy?
I'm good, man. I'm good.
Fascinating life when you look at it.
I'm nearly 60, and I'm 60 in 2 months. Actually, yeah, I'm 60 next month, actually.
You know the way people normally in life, especially in the kind of traditional jobs, they build up for a peak and they build up towards a pension and a retirement, and then you get to a point where you can enjoy it. What was it like reaching everything you dreamt of so young in the years that followed? Was that a struggle?
I don't think that I really knew in some ways how far I had taken it. And and the big reveal is now, that only now I look back on it and I go, God, I really did go high. I really did get it up the mountain. I'm not being big-headed. I'm just saying, there's times that, that I go, God, you know what I mean? Because it's like, that was all 25 years ago, you know what I mean? But you're looking at it and go, while I was doing it, I thought it was sort of not normal. I knew it wasn't normal, but I didn't think it was that extraordinary, really. And then I'm looking back at it now, Connor, and in the last few years as I've got older and everything, I'm like, God, you really, they were the biggest band in the world, and, Creation was the biggest indie in the world. It was, at one point, it's mad. Do you know what I mean?
I know the name there on the right says Connor, but just for the rest of the interview, it's Michael you're talking to here.
Right. So you really are called Michael. Sorry, man. Sorry.
No, don't worry about it. It's just if we're saying Connor 100 times, it's going to be one fucking hell of an edit.
Sorry, right. Yeah, no problem.
Do you think that the way, as you said, you didn't know you'd taken it that far, and there's people who go and study management in university in such a traditional format, do you think you were nearly benefited by such a lack of fear?
I benefited by a lack of education, to be absolutely honest, and more than lack of fear. My fear was fear of failure, because the only thing I could do, Michael, was do music. Because if I hadn't done music, I had one O level, a C in arithmetic. I hated school. Basically, kind of forced out. I was 15 or 16 by school. Not exactly expelled, but in fact, they didn't like me, you know what I mean? And I would get into the punk thing, and I realised pretty early in my teens that if I didn't make music work, I was going to amount to basically very little. Do you know what I mean? I was like, on a good day, you could think I might have become a taxi driver. And on a bad day, the likelihood I was just going to become a labourer. And being 59 now, I'd be too old. Nobody would employ a 59-year-old labourer unless they were related to them.
And your parents used to say to you, didn't they, that you could be an electrician and maybe by the time you're 40, you have enough money to buy yourself a Jower?
Yeah. They did say all that, yeah.
Your dad used to, obviously, as was the norm, not only in Glasgow for kids who were growing up in the 70s, but also Ireland and numerous places around working class England. He was, to put it in no uncertain terms, he was beating the shit out of you.
Yeah, he put me in hospital a few times, man, and I don't know if it was that normal. I mean, I know it was normal to our culture and your culture. I'm not denying that. But most of my pals weren't ending up in hospital overnight battered. Do you know what I mean?
It was going that far, was it? It was hospitalisation.
Yeah, put me in hospital. So that happened a couple of times, and there was a lot of really bad doings. There was one that was extremely bad, and even I, to this day, look at it and go, that was insane. That was the one when he threw me out right after that one, when I was 16 and a half. It was the summer a punk. It was the summer of 77. And he was a Mason, my dad. He's a kind of bigot, to be honest. And he went to his Masonic thing, and he came back And I'd had an argument with my mother about an hour before or something. I went to my bed because I was a bit argumentative, but not a bad boy, really.
You weren't calling her a whore or anything fucking ridiculous.
Probably disagreed with her, you know what I mean? Anyway, I was in bed and I woke up to my dad, miraculous drunk, sitting on top of me, punching my face. And at that point, I actually went, I'm going to have to leave because where does this go? Do you know what I mean? And there was another fight that was terrible.
What did he want you to be, though? Was he beating you because he had his own, possibly now it would be looked at as mental health issues? Or was he beating you because he wanted you to be different?
I've never really thought of it like that. I think he was beating me because I wasn't him. Do you know what I mean? And I got into punk, and that 6 months before I left the house, from about 15-year-old, the end of 76, I was getting into punk. I was looking as if I was in the Buzzcocks. I was wearing Oxfam kind of clothes, if you know what I mean, going to Oxfam, buying little tweed jackets, wearing makeup, but not a lot, just, you remember, I don't know what
bit of glam rock.
Yeah, not as full on as glam rock, but a little bit of makeup in my eyes. But I'm not, I was never, I'm a straight guy, but I was like, I was 16. I was playing up to it,
It was cool back then, though, wasn't it, to kind of flirt on the boundary of straight and gay? It's what Bowie was doing. It's what they were all doing.
That's probably what I was doing. And I remember that one kicking. Well, it wasn't even a kicking. He just punched my head in bed with my hands underneath the bed covers. And at that point, I got up and he said, "You're out." And I went and moved into Bobby Gillespie's house. He lived with his father. And I moved in there for about a year. And then...
Bobby Gillespie of Primal Scream.
Yeah, that's my best pal.
Was he getting leathered at home?
He wasn't. Bob's dad was cool. Bob's dad was a trade unionist, full-on socialist guy.
Would your dad have identified as left-wing? Because he was working class. Would he have been anti-Tory government?
I think my dad was basically a secret Tory. I mean, he's pretty... you're Irish, so you'll get it. I mean, he was pretty bigoted, man, you know what I mean?
That's the thing with the old left wing, though, isn't it? Like nowadays, the working class left wing is something that's nearly pro creativity. It's pro expression. But back in the day, although they would have had huge problems with the establishment, it was nearly just all focused on an anger about having less money, as opposed to that much of an ideological difference.
Yeah, you're right. And my dad was. He was so angry that he was getting. Basically, he still drinks. I've only seen my dad 2 or 3 times in the last 20 years, but he was an absolute pisshead. He used to make. Do you remember in the 70s people used to make their own beer? They used to make their own beer, home brew, he used to call it, and he'd go to the basement. And that time that I got the proper kicking off my dad, really, really proper kicking, and I ended up in the hospital was a couple of times. But that one time. He came up, it was probably about 12:30, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Sunday afternoon. My dad was flying, man, right? Because he'd been drinking his own home brew and then came up and then kicked me down a flight of stairs.
What do you say to the doctors when you get the shit kicked out of you by your dad? What do you say when you're in there?
I was only about 14, mate. You know what I mean? So it was. I didn't say anything. I just said I fell. But I did fall. I got kicked out a flight of stairs. And he was jumping in my head. Then... This I actually only really remember this really the last few years, this one bit. And then he got my leg and he was trying to break my leg on the bottom of the stair. But who wants to break their son's leg? And I managed to because I was small, I was a small boy at that point. I wriggled away from him and I knew how to stop him, and I went and got a kitchen knife. And then there was a standoff. I had a fucking 12-inch carving knife thing, kitchen knife. And my dad was so mad. My dad was going, attack me. Come on. And then I looked down, mate, and I was just covered in blood down, on the ground. It was just pouring out my head. And where he kicked me down the stairs, I'd split my head. I had to go to hospital and get 8 stitches in the back of my head. But the blood was all over the kitchen floor,
Do you think he saw something in you that was entrepreneurial and possibly better than him? Do you think he envied you? Because that can happen with fathers and sons. You went on to be this huge success, multi-millionaire, sign Oasis. Do you think he saw something in you that wasn't going to be a labourer and he hated you for it?
No, I think he wanted me to be a Glasgow he calls himself, I mean, the guy's about 85, but, you know, but back in the day, when I was still talking to him in his 60s, you know, he used to call himself a Glasgow bear. That's the way my old man sees the world. It's like, being Irish, you ought to understand what I'm trying to say. That old Glasgow mentality, it's beyond Neanderthal. Do you know what I mean? It literally, do you know what I mean? I mean, he probably sees the fact he put me in hospital as a rite of passage or something.
But you know the great punk bands that came from Glasgow, and even the great rock and roll bands that came from Manchester, that were the sons of these violent men. It was a nearly vital part of it, though, because manliness and being a bit hard was kind of part of it, wasn't it? Even in the 90s and the 80s, with the rise of, like, the Sex Pistols, yes, they were left-wing, they were liberal, but they were tough men. It's similar to Liam and Noel Gallagher. They would have prided themselves in the hard man thing. So it was a move forward from what their dads were, but they still kind of used that masculine ideology to sell records. Yeah.
And I mean, I suppose because I'd been battered so many times, not just at school, you know, we fight at school, but because I'd grown up in a house that I was always getting thumped. Do you know what I mean? By my mum and my gran, when I was 8, 9, used to batter the fuck out of me. But by the time I got to like 15, 16, 14 really, the real violence started happening to me, like getting put in hospital. That was my dad, and he was attacking me like I was a man. Except he was about 40, 41. And I was like 14, you know what I mean? And it's not a fair fight, mate, you know what I mean?
When you got famous, did he ever ring you for a few bob?
Yeah, you know, I've given him money, mate. I've given him bought my house, blah, blah, blah. You know, I sorted him out back in the day. No, we fell out, Michael. I've never spoken about this publicly, but we fell out. It's a funny story, though. It was always going that way. It was going that way, right? But we really fell out about 2001 or 2 or something like that. And I was in my house in St John's Wood, and I was on the internet, and I think it was about 2001 actually, right? But anyway, I was going down the Sunday Mail, and it says, Oasis guru doesn't go to his sister's wedding. And I was like, fuck, it must be me. So anyway, I clicked on it, and my dad, he's had 3 different wives. My mum died, and then he was with the second wife. And I had 2 stepsisters that I'd met twice. And one of them had got married and then went to the papers and said, I basically sold a story about it and said, he never came, even though I was never invited. So I was like reading the news of the world, and I'd been set up. So I then phoned my father and kicked off. And all he had to do, Michael, was go, I apologise, I've married into this fucking family. I apologise. But my dad, being a fucking Ned, basically was threatening me down the phone, and I just thought, enough. And after that, we've never been tight, you know.
Do you find Glasgow people support their own, or do you find that they're envious? Not even just envious, but if you leave their kind of remit and culture in order to get success, they just think, fuck you. You think you're better than us. You living in London, being in rock and roll, would the real Glaswegian bears, would they resent you?
I think they like me overall because I brought them Oasis. But if you think about a lot of my bands, they're off in Glasgow or Edinburgh, and I made them famous. Look at it. Fan Club, Mary Chain, Primal Scream, Mogwai, Eugenius. There's probably loads. Superstar. And then I've got Shambolics up there now. Do you know what I mean? I mean, it's like, so I think because of Cosmic Off Riders back in the day, because I've always been at the heart of Scottish music, really, since the 80s, I've been managing all these different bands.
What is the skill of making people famous that you've seemed to have had? Because as I said, you'd no education, you're fucked out of the gaff at 16. You had a period of homelessness that you've said you didn't even really recognise at your youthful age was homelessness, but you were sleeping on the top of the tube station at Covent Garden. What is the skill you had? Is it kind of the same skill set, although a different genre? Is it the same personality traits as somebody like Simon Cowell to an extent? Probably. I mean, I'm driven, but mine comes from fear of failure, I think. Do you know what I mean? But you know, the only thing is, since we're going that way with this interview, I think you only learn when you fail. Do you know what I mean? I mean, the best lessons that I've had in life is not when I was winning, but when I was failing. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But are you motivated by money and career satisfaction, or was there also a part of you that wanted to put bands that you think could speak to generations in the limelight? Because obviously the bands, they're the main people who deserve the credit. They're the songwriters. It's their words. But also there's somebody who has to put the words into the social psyche. Did you feel like you wanted young people to have something you didn't have when you were ostracized in a Glaswegian masculine community, getting smacked around by your dad wearing makeup? Did you kind of want to give the youths, do you think, maybe to make up for something you didn't have, something to relate to?
I think it was more personal to me, really. I think that I got addicted to breaking bands. When I started having hits with the Mary Chain, that was the first band I broke. I think at that point it was like, fuck, give me some of this. This is amazing. It was like drugs. And then
it made you feel important, did it?
Yeah, it felt great, you know. And then I started smashing it with other bands. And then by 90, I broke Valentine's, I broke House of Love. And then I started breaking other Scottish bands like Scream and Fan Club. And then I got on a real roll, especially in the 90s, man, you know what I mean?
Do you think though you could have been like a boxing promoter, or you could have been anything in the realm of marketing? Is it a passion for music, or is it a skill set? Like when you use the word break bands, what is that skill? How were you so good at putting them into the media psyche? How did you make the media pick up on the bands you were promoting so easily? Because
I became the culture. Do you know what I mean? Creation became the culture. When Creation came out initially, it was a joke label, Michael, right? From 83 to most of the way through 84, people just thought we were a kind of retro, shitty indie label. Broke the Mary Chain, and they created a big stir. And then that was a hangover that we were still retro up to about 88. And then I broke House of Love and Valentine's the same year. And then people started to take it seriously. And then it just grew and grew and grew. But initially, but in 88, when I say we became the culture, we became first the indie culture, the hip thing, you know what I mean? And then with Oasis, we became the mainstream culture. I mean, you got to think that when it got to Nebworth, we had become the culture. Do you know what I mean? You know, Creation promoting Oasis.
Would you rate Oasis as high as the boys from the 80s, though? Because they were mainstream culture and they were very relatable, and Liam Gallagher looked like he crawled out of a GQ shoot. Would you think that was the time where you made money and the time that you got fame, or would you actually have them? Would they impact you musically? Would you feel as many emotions Oasis saying as Primal Scream?
I love Oasis, Michael. I love them. Do you know what I mean? And such an amazing band musically. Yeah, you see, the thing is with me, it's really complex about how I do it. I'm really obsessed with music. Do you know what I mean? And I somehow managed to, I think because Creation became the hip culture, then people had to buy into the vision. And then probably most people would have peaked at Screamadelica, Loveless, Bandwagon-esque, right? These three albums. And that would still be an amazing label. Oh, he was amazing in 1991. And we came out the other side of that, and then I met the Gallaghers, and then exploded. Do you know what I mean?
Were you a leader when you were younger, though? Did you have the ability to manipulate people towards your vision when you were 7, 8, 14, 15 in schoolyards? There's an element of manipulation to it, isn't it, though? The reason why Creation was so great is because the bands, and you did have their best interests at heart, but that meant you to go the extra mile. You were doing the cocaine. You were doing the acid with them until the end of that night and going again. Things other agents and managers weren't doing because you wanted them to know, I'm in this with you. You were the 5th or 6th band member of every band you promoted, really.
But that was my downfall, Michael, as well. You know?
But is it also what made them trust you so much and what made them buy into your vision so much? Was it nearly necessary for the success of the drug?
I brought the Mary Chain. The Mary Chain, I kind of got that because nobody else wanted it, and then I became the manager, brought the band signed to Warner's, all that stuff. By the time the House of Love had come round, I'd become a full-on party boy. But I realised that, I mean, it's such a crass thing to say, but I realised that if I took the bands out, I just got them absolutely off the fucking nut, you know, on ecstasy, coke, booze, blah, blah, blah. They're probably going to sign to me eventually, do you know what I mean? Yeah. And that's what I did. I applied that to almost every signing, you know.
Hold on a second, just have to fix the mic here.
Good interview, by the way.
Sorry, I have the mic there now. Yeah, but what you're saying is, because that's what a lot of people do. Like, there's a lot of guys you'd see who go down to music festivals, who look like a mixture of Gail Platt and Doc Cotton, who are walking around with chicks who look like Kate Moss because they're getting the women into drugs for the first time. You know, when you see those young guys, they're 20, 21, 22, and they're pulling all the chicks because they're the drug guys. Did you use drugs as a tool to get the bands to buy into your ideology, but then you were actually the person who had possibly more addiction problems than them, so you're the one who ended up losing out?
I think I did. Do you know what I mean? I knew that if I gave the bands the best fucking... I mean, I had it pretty set up for myself as it went on, because I ended up like renting a penthouse flat in Rotherhithe with a fucking swimming pool, and it would just be like fucking carnage going back and dropping E's on a Sunday morning, and do you know what I mean? Like, and just a party for 2 or 3 days and then rolling into the office. It's kind of what creation was, you know. What
did you love about drugs? Did you love how they made you feel, or were you fighting something from childhood? Probably getting punched by your dad 20 times makes you want to self-medicate when you're older.
Especially ecstasy. I was probably just felt great. You know, I mean, it's like, on the upside of ecstasy, it's a phenomenal drug. The downside of ecstasy, it ravages everybody, doesn't it? But if you batter it, and I suppose that's really what I was doing, you know.
Was money not enough of a drug for you, though? Because you were making money that you never could have envisaged.
Yeah, but initially I wasn't making that much money. I mean, I was managing bands and I was putting it all back into the business. Do you know what I mean? The only time the money... I mean, you got to keep it in context, what I'm trying to say here. You know, I'd made a couple of million, and then I met the Gallaghers, and then I made literally millions. So, you know, that first bit was me just, you know, I mean, it was great compared to what I should have been doing in Glasgow. But my eye was always on a bigger prize. Then when I met them, and then it just fucking exploded. Who
needed who more? Did you make Oasis bigger than they would have been if they didn't sign for someone else? Or were you very lucky to find an act that had their whole image, their whole symbolic nature of Noel being the poet in the background who's not as confident or handsome, and then to have the town crier, as Pete Doherty called it, at the front?
I was really lucky. I found them and I signed them. My part in it, I think, is probably... if they'd signed to a major or somebody else, I'm not sure the other people... This is before Oasis had fucking made a record, right? You know, I'm not sure people would have let them run with their vision. I did do that, you know. And then when I needed to step in and sort it on the first album, I made them re-record it. I got the big decisions right, you know.
What were the big decisions? Was there any track you pulled?
Pulled an entire album. They recorded Definitely Maybe with the Hoople producer.
Yeah.
And it wasn't right. Do you know what I mean? And
what was wrong with it?
Bland. It was cabaret. You know, he'd recorded all the instruments separately, so there was no vibe. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I scrapped it, and then I made them re-record it. I put in the live sound guy. They went into somebody's kitchen and at Sawmill Studio, terrible little wee room. You know, I mean, not a terrible room, but it's a really small room.
Yeah.
And they recorded it in there, and you know, all live, played at the same time, and we got the recording. And then even then, it was still a struggle. Mark couldn't mix it, Mark Coyle, so we ended up we kind of like we were starting to go, what the fuck? Who's going to mix this? And eventually, we got Owen Morris, Marcus, their manager, got Owen Morris, and we gave him a free mix, and he nailed it. You know,
were the boys easy to work with? And did their heads ever get too big, or was that bravado that it led to more record sales?
No, I mean, look, of course, anybody that sells that amount of records, 23 million albums, of course it goes to your head. Do you know what I mean? But with me, they were easy to work with because, you know, I wasn't actually the manager. I was the one that had the publishing and the records. I was responsible for the records and the publishing. Marcus was responsible for the management. He's a brilliant manager, you know. So, you know, he took the brunt of the madness, you know.
I'm a huge Pete Doherty fan. When you look at his songs, the actual structure, the songwriting and what he's saying, you might not commit to saying this, but I'd have him on a completely different level to Oasis as an actual songwriter.
Do you think he's better?
Without question.
Right, I don't. But I think he's...
You don't think he's better?
No, I don't. I think he's good, though. He's really, really talented. I mean, I think you underestimate Noel Gallagher as a writer. I think when he's doing that pop rock thing that he does, I think he's the best. I don't want he's not the best ever because he's not the Beatles or the Stones or any of the Kinks. But from a younger generation thing, I think it's as good as it gets with the songwriting. I think he's incredible, you know.
Are you a lyrics guy at all, though?
Not really.
Not really.
You know, I'm more a melody guy, if I was being honest, you know.
Would you be a big Alex Turner guy?
I think he's good. He's really, really good. You know, but Gallagher sees all of these guys off by quite a long way.
Do you think so, yeah?
Yeah, by a long way. You can't deny the songs that guy's come up with, like the Master Plan. It was the 4th track on Wonderwall. I mean, who does that? That's insanity. I mean, I let it happen. That's how fucking insane it was, you know?
Some people would have a poetic view to an extent towards lyricism and music and the message of what's being said. Gallagher's music was very easy to rock out to for the masses. It made people feel. So in a way, yes, that selling point would make him greater than those guys. But actually breaking it down as a literary piece, nearly, if you look at what Pete Doherty's saying, you can nearly you can smell the pain of heroin addiction off his words.
I mean, when I met Peter, he just, I mean, it's a mad story. I met him before Banny left, and I went down to the first album session. How did I end up there? I can't even remember. I think somebody took me to the studio, and Pete was there. That was the first time I met him. Mick Jones was producing it. And then Banny came and had a meeting with me because the band were so fucking out of control. And she was just saying, oh, fucking, how do you think I should deal with this? And I was going to try this, try that. And I didn't think too much more of it. And then she resigned. And then Rough Trade had decided, James Endicott, I don't know if you know James. James had signed him to Rough Trade, decided that I was the person that could save the Libertines from themselves, basically. Right? And I ended up, I had a meeting with Pete, and I went on down to Catford because he was living with his sister, and he just burgled Michael Carroll's flat. Do you remember all that?
Yeah.
Right. And
well, burgled is can you really burgle a mate? He kind of snuck in.
And they called it burglary. He got prosecuted for burglary, whatever that means. So he got done for that, and he was awaiting trial. And then he said, and I went down, and he went, all right, and we sat and we talked, and he hadn't showed up to his probation officer 2 or 3 times. So I said, well, you're going to get done for that. You will get done for it, mate. And you're going to go down. And he was like, I don't care. And then he got thrown in prison for about, I think, what did he get? He got about 3 months or something like that, something like that. So I went off to America, and I was working with Joaquin Phoenix, and I got a phone call off of James, and James said to me, come back, McGee, come back. We all want to see you. And I was in studios. I was like, no, I'm not coming back. And then I came back about 10 days later, and I ended up, as I was trying to get away from the situation, I'd said no to it quite a few times in New York, but I thought if I take the meeting and then convince them I'm not the man for the job, then I'll be able to wriggle out of this. I had the meeting, but Carol and Pete are so fucking charming that I ended up walking out the meeting managing the Libertines. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it wasn't a slam dunk at that point. The album had went in at 35 in the charts, and it had bombed Michael, right? And Rough Trade were worried because they were about 100, 200,000 down on the whole thing. The record had sold to their very small fan base at that point, and it was weird for them, you know?
If they had the right attitude, though, do you think that they could have taken over the world?
Oh, beyond. Yeah, I mean, it's not so much the attitude. Let's call it what it is. If they weren't addicted to fucking drugs, they still probably could. Do you know what I mean? I mean, it's the natural talent. I hear you about Peter Doherty. He's an amazing fucking talent. But I've always thought the drugs have got in the way. Although, to be absolutely honest, what's that great track? Fuck Forever. That's just genius. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he's still hit the park a few times. But, but I've always thought that the drugs, if he'd just been sober, well, not sober, but if he'd just not been a fucking junkie, I think it was game on for being one of the biggest bands ever.
Why did you never get into the brand?
I tried it 3 or 4 times.
The actual injecting it or smoking it?
Smoking it. And then I tried crack a few times. We used to call it freebasing back in the late 80s. Do you know what I mean? With Primal Scream. Do you know what I mean? It was the same thing, the Vittel bottle and blah, blah, blah. But I just just didn't get into it. Do you know what I mean?
With music, there is an escapism though, because you find so many people who are involved in it who do have these dubious pasts. Do you think that creativity is an innate talent, or is a way of expressing yourself and escaping from something that happened in childhood? Because childhood, they say, are your most formative years. They talk about how a lot of Lennon's music screams towards a longing for a maternal figure.
I think with some of these people that you're into, like especially Peter, Carol's trouble to fuck it as well. Yeah, I think there's something that's their upbringing that's kind of created this thing, you know.
Do you miss the days of indie rock and roll being popular? Or do you think times move on and people need to get over it?
I probably miss it. But yeah, I'm kind of, I mean, I love what everybody else loves. Like, I love Kanye, I love Drake, you know, I mean, I love all the pop things, you know, that, yeah, I love Kendrick. I mean, things he probably wouldn't think I like. Do you know what I mean?
The 90s Britpop era, it was kind of an impression of the 60s, really, wasn't it? And it was 30 years on. Do you think that in the next 10 years we're going to see another post-punk revival or guitar bands being mainstream and being popular and selling huge numbers, or even being downloaded more times than R&B and rap and hip-hop?
I can't see it, can you? I think music's changed again. I don't think that. I think it's a niche pastime that I love. Don't get me wrong. It's kind of the music I love. But that indie, punky, rock and roll thing, I don't think it's ever going to sell in these massive numbers again, you know?
And do you think that online media, it's given such buying power to 14, 15-year-old girls, things like TikTok, they've suddenly become much more important in the market?
It's weird. I've downloaded TikTok the other week on my phone. I've never had it before. About a week or 2 weeks ago. And it's just people fucking taking the piss. Is there anything serious in TikTok? And am I missing that?
No, I don't understand it at all. It's just people dancing and miming.
Yeah, it's just people basically taking the piss out of themselves, unless I've got that wrong, you know?
No, it has to be. And what I worry about the young generation is now, we all think they're taking the piss out of themselves, but they actually think that's acceptable behaviour.
Right.
So I actually think that there's a bigger generational gap now, although people who grew up in the 60s and 70s, like yourself, had their L fellows treating them like Khabib treats Conor McGregor. Although there's a huge ideological difference, and you see the likes of you and so many other people would have a completely different relationship with their children than their dads would have had. I think technology has made it nearly robotic. And I think if someone who's 30 now could speak to a 10-year-old, there'd actually be a bigger difference than there would have been in the 60s, because these kids are growing up with these things in their hands. No one knows what's going on anymore. The world's actually gone fucking mental. Would the coronavirus have taken off to such an extent if it wasn't for Twitter and Facebook forcing things like a lockdown?
I know. It's mad. I don't know anybody personally that's died from it. Do you know what I mean?
Are you not a big lockdown? Because it's a left-wing stance to be big, wear your mask and stay at home.
I do wear it. I mean, am I left wing? I don't know if I am, but
is the reason you didn't do this face to face not due to the coronavirus?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
You'd be a bit of a coronavirus head.
A little bit. No, I'm not. I'm not extreme though. Do you know what I mean? You know, I've just picked up The View. You know that band, The View. If you like Doherty, you'll know who that is.
Yeah,
Scottish band. And I went and sat in a hotel with them for about 5 hours. When I was basically cutting the deal with them. So I will do it. The only reason, my friend, I never did the interview with you in the studio was I don't know you, do you know what I mean? And a bit like, it was like a bit of fun do this interview with you. So it was just, but if I have to go and meet people, I'll do it, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Because you've nothing to gain really now. You've kind of completed the game in entertainment.
Yeah. Well, so the reason I'm doing it is I actually love music. I'm putting these records out, Clockworks Records Creation 23, because I love doing it. I'll actually get off. Well, you said a good thing. You said, is it job satisfaction? I like being involved in putting out bands' music. I love breaking bands. But
what do you make of the Clockworks? Good band, wrong era.
Hopefully we can make it the right era. But great fucking band. Brilliant band. As good as a lot of the bands that I signed in the late 80s. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. If they were around 20 years ago, they wouldn't be playing in Whelan's in Dublin.
Yeah, I agree. Hopefully, they can get... You know, I mean, it's sad. You know, when somebody like The Strokes put that album out, don't know if you like them, I presume.
Yeah.
And it just came and went, didn't it? Nobody even talks about it. It literally... that's the kind of thing that we're living in a weird time, aren't we? You know what I mean?
Not only has music been ruined from social media, though, but like you're someone who, because you had such an effect with Oasis of changing the psyche of youth culture in the UK in the 1990s, in the 1997 general election, New Labour actually took you in to try to be somebody who could market the young market to vote for them. And as you learned the hard way, Tony Blair, you said your old man was a Tory in disguise. We'd Ken Loach on recently, you know, the director. He was nearly suggesting that Tony Blair and a lot of the Labour boys in the late 90s and early 90s were actually the exact same thing.
I think he's not a left-wing guy at all. I know him still a little bit, you know what I mean? But
Tony Blair?
Yeah.
He didn't really listen to you, did he? You came in, you changed one regulation, it worked a bit, but he didn't really give you or the guys that were brought in the same voices you thought you were going in with.
Yeah, it wasn't that bad. I mean, we changed the law. I don't know if you know it, we changed the law with New Deal for musicians. We got every day, you could be a musician for about 10 years in England for 2000, from I think it was 98 to 2008. You could get the dole for being a musician, which is fucking incredible because now they don't even want you on benefits in England. Do you know what I mean?
You think they're killing the arts slowly?
I don't think it's about the arts, man. I think they don't want the Tories don't want people on benefits. Do you know what I mean? I mean that's it. I mean that's what, you know, they just cut it back and cut it back. Do you know what I mean? But back in the day, anyway. That went into law and musicians could get benefits. It was unbelievable, you know. So I think that was pretty good. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I don't regret the New Labour thing. I kind of fell out with them in the late 90s because I put Malcolm McLaren up for the Mayor of London. But and they couldn't get my humour really.
I presume you're glad you weren't there for the Iraq thing.
Oh yeah, terrible, man. I mean, what can you do? I mean, that's his biggest mistake. When I saw him for about an hour, about a year ago, and I sat and talked to him. And you know when somebody, the elephant, it's like the elephant in the room. They know they're fucked up. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like that's what he's like now. You know, it's a little bit like don't mention the war. Do you know what I mean?
Faulty Towers. Yeah. But do you know what I mean in terms of like when you boys were doing it, 70s, 80s, and 90s. And you were leaning towards Labour and you had the anti-Tory stance. It came from a very genuine place. Rock and roll and punk music was dominated by working class people who had a voice. But nowadays, what we see is with social media is a lot of middle class kids from London pretending to be these left-wing social warriors because they're getting hits on their Instagram and Facebook when they could not give a fuck about the working class.
But dude, it goes way beyond music. Like fucking Jeremy Corbyn. That's exactly, you just explained Jeremy Corbyn. Jeremy Corbyn is like the cranky geography teacher that studied Marxism when he was at university.
Yes.
And he went to private school. That's who Jeremy Corbyn actually is.
But what kind of figure or what kind of people do you think need to lead Labour in order to make sure it starts getting fucking votes again?
Somebody that wants to win, man. Do you know what I mean? I mean, the fact, I think it was a dereliction of duty putting Jeremy Corbyn up as the leader of the Labour Party. He was unelectable to the majority of British people. And that's why they got fucking battered. Do you know what I mean? And I don't think it was because Boris did anything great. He just wasn't fucking Jeremy Corbyn. And people, no matter what Jeremy fucking thought, I mean, maybe it appeals to lots of other middle-class, student-y, left-wing types, right? But the majority of people were just like, he's just a fucking cunt. Loads of people, that's why he didn't get in, do you know what I mean?
And even in the campaign in the last general election, and this has nothing got to do with the man himself, but is Hugh Grant really the best person to be knocking door to door representing the Labour Party?
I know.
He literally played the middle class prick in every film that was released in the 90s.
Yeah. And it was terrible, that campaign. I was so angry about it because it was like giving in. Do you know what I mean? And then it got to 10 o'clock, Michael, on the exit poll, and it was suddenly like, oh, the Tories are going to win by what? They won about 80 seats, but I think that was even saying it was going to be 95 seats. Do you remember that? Do you know what I mean?
You obviously wanted Britain to stay in the EU, I presume, as a Scotsman.
Totally. Yeah.
Do you want Scotland to fuck off now altogether?
Only because I've got Scottish blood in me, and all my pals want that, and Yeah, you can't. I mean, England's so fucking crazy. You know, it's like, I mean, Boris. It's like America. These guys are like it's like celebrity government.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like they're both TV stars. It's like he's a star of Never Mind the Buzzcocks, and Trump's a star of the Apprentice. And you know, I mean, I suppose Boris is not looking that bad because he's got Trump to shine up against.
Oh,
Do you
if
know what I
Trump
mean?
wasn't there, there'd be a witch hunt outside 10 Downing Street every night nearly.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I agree.
But that's celebrity culture. The Trump presidency has nearly officially ended the notion of taking the president seriously, and it's shown democracy.
I think he's going to get in again.
But who follows him? Who even follows him? Like, there's a possibility that could be a Will Smith character. Politics is kind of dead in a capitalistic system.
But, you know, but see the thing with Trump, right? It's like Biden. I think Biden has got dementia or something like that. He's just out to lunch. He's like Corbyn. He's fucking unelectable, right? And Trump, I think he's a cunt. I think there's loads of fucking shit on him. I think Russia's probably true. A load of the sex stuff is probably true. I think there's a lot, you know, there's a lot of shit out there about Donald Trump, and it's probably true.
But a lot of it's overdone, though, as well. I mean, his brother died 2 days ago, and he was getting abused on Twitter for it. I mean, I'm
not on Twitter, mate. But he's fucking entertaining, and that chokes me, Michael, to say Donald Trump's entertaining. He fucking is. And that's why he's going to get in. It's like, it's not dull with Donald Trump. It's fucking, you know, and it's like Biden is just, I mean, I just can't see how he can win, really, because it's going to come to it. If Trump can activate his base, he's going to get in again by quite a long way, I think, you know.
That's what the majority of people subliminally nearly just seek. It's similar to Liam Gallagher starting the paparazzi. Entertainment is what engages people, regardless of what it is. And politics, people claim it's important to them because they like to see culture down in the fucking boozer. But the reality is it only affects the bottom half of society. It affects the black people in America, and it affects the working class people in England. And the rest are all just fucking codders. And they want to have a bit of crack off politics because Twitter and Facebook has turned it into entertainment. So as long as Johnson keeps the hair blonde and says crazy shit, and as long as Donald Trump is orange and says crazy shit, they will remain in power because that's the world we've created.
He's fucking clueless, Boris. He's just, I mean, it's just, you get to Matt Hancock, he's fucking unemployable. They put this unemployable guy in charge of fucking the health of the country. I mean, and like the fool Boris is, he got the corona, fucking Matt Hancock, they all got it, didn't they? Because they're all so fucking cocky that they thought they weren't going to get it. Do you know what I mean? Just a fucking shower of fucking shit, man.
Is the feature still happening, the Irvine Welsh thing, or did the coronavirus fuck that all together?
No, it's films. It's literally getting finished off. I mean, maybe it got finished last week. They're going to send me it really soon. It was supposed to come out in Cannes on May, but obviously Cannes never happened. And I think what will happen is, because this corona thing's going to go on for a bit, I think they're probably just going to, sell it to Netflix or put it up on that. And it's pretty funny, man. I mean, Irvine Welsh is fucking phenomenal, you know what I mean?
What's it like having someone act as you? Like, that must be a pretty strange sensation. I presume you never thought that was going to be in your life script.
I don't think I'm that dramatic anymore. Do you know what I mean? I think maybe in the 90s, maybe I was a bit more dramatic, but the character's kind of high drama character. And I don't think, well, you've just sat and talked to me for half an hour, mate. It's like, I don't think I particularly am a particularly high drama character, you know what I mean?
Was it a high budget film?
No, it's cheap. I think without the wages to the crew and the actors, I think it's shot for about 1.8 with the editing, you know. What
kind of money are you getting off this film? Like, are you going down as a screenwriter? What do you go down as?
Consultant, and then they paid me for writing the book, and then Irvine did the script, and then I've got a piece of the back end. So it's good, you know. Well, I don't know if I'll ever make any money in it, but I've had a good I've had a good wad of cash in it already, you know.
Do you just flip property and all now as your main income?
Well, my wife runs it, you know what I mean? She's like I was out with her, and I'm down here in Wales, and I was out with her. We've got quite a lot of property in Wales, and she's like a sergeant major, my missus. She was like turning around some church that I bought. Well, I got phone hacked about 10 years ago by News of the World. I got phone hacked. And then I sued them, Michael. And I got good money, and then I bought a great church. And then
what do you mean phone hacked? How does that? What did they do there? They broke into her voicemails, did they?
Yeah. Well, how they were phone hacking you, if you want me to be dead precise, was that somehow they got hold. They must have bought it on the sly. Your code, which was at the time it was 8051, right? And what they would do is they'd wait till I was on the phone, and I used to live on the phone. And I got phone hacked, I think, between 2004, 2006 or 7 or 8, something like that, right? And they'd wait till I was on the phone, it was engaged, and then they would put in my code 8051, and they'd go into my. So it was a flaw in the phones, and but it was every mobile phone. That's how you could do it, and you went into the voice messages. And then they would just listen to my messages, you know.
And what kind of information did they get though? Like, what was so controversial about you that they wanted to hack?
Well, I was a B suspect. A B person. I wasn't an A person. It was A, B, and C. And I was a connector person to Gallagher's, Courtney Love, blah, blah, blah. Do you know what I mean? And Bobby Gillespie, whatever. Right? So that's who I was. But they were big on the B people because they were the people that I suppose were the fixers, you know.
This wasn't when Piers Morgan was still involved, was it?
No.
Or Oasis getting back together. It's a genuine fallout that has stemmed from two brothers who view themselves as two completely different things.
Oh yeah, no, it's not an act.
Do you ever get frustrated with that though? That people have such an interest and think they know something about something, but you know that Liam probably thinks that he sold Oasis with the image and the coolness, and Noel knows it was his genius. And that conflict, especially if you're siblings.
I think it was more than just Liam looks good. I mean, Liam's got a genius voice. I mean, arguably, on his day in the 90s, he had the best voice in the world at one point. It looked amazing. Noel had the songs. Noel had the business drive as well, actually. No, I don't get pissed off with it because, dude, it's a bit like saying Brian Epstein to the Beatles or something like that. You don't, I mean, they're my band. I kind of found them and they blew up. And you know, I'm never going to get bored saying to fans the truth. But the truth is they ain't, you know Paul, so you know it's true. The band ain't getting back together anytime soon. And arguably, they're never getting back together, you know what I mean?
Do you have any rights because you signed them in terms of, like, if they get back together, is it automatic fact that you are the person still who's involved?
Oh, no, I wouldn't be involved. I had publishing. I owned the publishing up to 2011, and then the rights reverted back to Noel. But I can't be a cunt about it because I mean I had a great fucking run. Do you know what I mean?
Would you still be in touch with them?
Yeah. I'm friends with Noel. Yeah. I mean he's on his holidays. I think he's back today actually. I talked to him quite a bit. I haven't seen Liam in about 5 years or something like that. 6 years, Michael. I went out and DJ'd for him in Japan. 2014. You know the last two BDI shows? Weirdly, I was there, and weirdly, I was the DJ.
Is it very tough for someone who had your story and your route to give any advice or guidance to not only young people, but even your own children in terms of following your path? Because you could not recommend to do what you did because you don't even really know what the formula is. It wasn't a fluke, but it was a drive that is the subject of terrible things that nearly happened to you.
My kids don't really have that drive. They're good kids.
Would you rather be them than you? Would you exchange what you did for their childhood? Do the childhood scars stay with you? Do you still mentally suffer from that, or does what you achieved in your own life make you actually a happy man?
I'm pretty happy. But I'm still slightly, dark about some of it, you know what I mean? But overall, I'm good, you know what I mean? And my kids, I've never hit them. With my daughter, I've never actually fucking had a proper argument with my daughter. My son has been in and out of prison. Sorry, that's somebody fucking sending me something there.
He's been in and out of prison, has he?
Yeah, he's been in and out of prison. I didn't bring him up. His mum, I broke up with his mum. Long story, mate. But I never got to bring him up. I never met him till he was 16, you know.
What was the story with the prison thing?
We went crazy. I met him at 16 and then he became a junkie 17, 18 and then was a junkie for 10 years, homeless, in and out of prison. And then eventually he wouldn't talk to me because he blamed me for his... Because I never saw him till he was 16.
Yeah.
The mother told him all sorts that I was this, I was that. Truth was, I was just his dad, that wanted to see him.
You would have given him whatever money he needed, especially when he was homeless. He just probably had the addiction gene that you and your father probably had as well.
Then he phoned me up about 28, Michael, and went, can you help me? That was about 3 years ago. And I'd only really known him between 16 to 18. And then I put him in rehab. And then he got thrown out all the different rehabs. But we eventually, literally, he got off opiates January, just before lockdown. How fucking psychedelic is that? Could you imagine being junkie during lockdown? That's a fucking tough one, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Do you think that rock and roll, you used to get criticised for this, not you, but the scene in general? And obviously, Cool Britannia and substance abuse were part of the rock and roll lifestyle. But do you regret how much they nearly advertised substance abuse? Like Oasis would always use it to suggest...
I can't speak for anybody else. I wish I hadn't done drugs, ultimately. Do you know what I mean? But I'm being a bit of a hypocrite. Acid house and ecstasy was fucking genius. So without doing all that, would I got to there? I don't know. Do you know what I mean?
It changes the personality and it makes you say things you'd never say and engage in conversations you'd never engage in your sober mind. It takes away your inhibitions.
Yeah.
Which is essential to the job you had.
Yeah. Oh, no, I think Screamadelica could never have happened if I hadn't went up to Manchester, got ease, went to Hacienda. I was mates with Sean Ryder and his brother and Gaz Whelan, fell in with that mob and then came back, took Bobby Gillespie to Happy Monday show during the Bum tour. Sean put ease in his mouth. A year and a half later, Screamadelica. Do you know what I mean?
What kind of old man do you want to be? You're 60 next year, yeah?
I just want to be doing... my hero's Seymour Stein. I don't know if you know who that is. Sire Records. And he's 75, 76, still putting music out. I want to be that old guy.
With the glasses and the goatee, just sitting at the bar, still known as music.
That's what I want, Fucking cliche, but I love music.
Would you have been on the prescribed medication, especially after the breakdown you had in the 90s?
I was on antidepressants, Valiums, fucking loads of shit, man, for years.
Do you think they work?
No. But ultimately, the one good thing about being blocked on Valium for quite a long time was it stopped me doing the coke and ecstasy and all the other things. So, and maybe it did work. Maybe I just had to block it, you know what I mean?
Do you think antidepressants work, or do they just nearly shut people up and make them easier to cope with for those who are around them? Was it something spiritual that made you clean, or was the years on antidepressants actually beneficial?
Maybe it was. I don't know, really. It's a good question, because I'm only coming to terms with that. I was on them for 23 years. A doctor said, you've got really bad depression issues. You better take this drug. And I just did. But it took me a long time to come off it. But, I'm literally now, not on anything at all. Nothing, you know what I mean?
And would you say now is where you have the clearest mind you've had in years?
And also with age, what's good with me with age, your body changes. And whereas 10, 15 years ago, I would have anxiety. If I was doing this interview about 10, 15 years ago, I'd be a wee bit nervous, do you know what I mean?
Okay, yeah.
Now I'm so calm the whole time,
From the 16-year-old guy who was told to be an electrician and that he'd be lucky to get a girlfriend with ginger hair, to the guy who made the biggest rock band of the late 20th century in the UK, what was the moment where you go, fuck me, I have really done it here?
Couldn't get a fucking girlfriend. When I was a kid, I was just like, I was invisible. I suppose Oasis being number one in 32 countries and me sitting at a therapist going, I never asked for this level of success, I'm depressed. And the therapist and the psychiatrist, there was a psychotherapist and a psychiatrist, I think that was it. And they were laughing at me. Do you know what I mean? It was brilliant. And that was the defining moment, you know what I mean? And
it kind of showed you that the person is bigger than all the external things like career and like everything else. Your own issues are really what define you as a man.
And that was like, literally, it was like, it doesn't get any bigger than your number one. And I was sitting there fucking miserable and going, I didn't ask for this. And them laughing at me. Psychedelic.
Oh, no, it's fascinating. It's been great talking to you, Alan. I really enjoyed it.
Have you, Michael? Thank you so much, man. I had no idea. I can go there, obviously, but I was just like, I thought it was going to be a bit of and they told me, the boys told me it was you're a bit of a comedian or something. I just thought you were going to be like being mad Irish guy talking. So I'm kind of pleased it was actually a good interview, you know.
I appreciate you coming on, and I'm sure the listeners will enjoy it. Top man, Alan.
Brilliant. See you, mate. Bye.
All right, thanks,
Bye.
buddy. Cheers.
It's been how many years, my boy?
Audiobook started shorter than
You
audiobooks.
still don't know my tears of joy. No need to go, just take it slow.
Podcast or something like that.
And have you heard the Michael Anthony show? A nice show.
Makes me feel just fine.
What's it help to see?
Makes me see the light.
What about those tears?
Tears, believe my eyes.
How's it make you feel?